Hey, Sydney.
Hey, Samuel.
Are you ready to ride your horse through the blood of the capitalist overlords, or are you a class traitor?
I love the drinking the blood of the capitalist overlords. Actually, I'm having a cup of tea right now. Like to put a drop of capitalist blood in it. So I prepare for the podcast.
Every morning I start my day with a cup of coffee with a little bit of whiskey in it, and Sydney ends hers with a spot of tea with pig blood in it.
I'm glad you're here on this Sunday. I'm going to get right into the message. I'm going to tell it like it is, as they say. Oh, I heard a hallelujah. Do you think I don't know what the hell is going on? And a lot of strange places. Where in the hell have you been? Hell fire. Hell fire. Hell fire. All right. Okay. There's something else, too.
Hello and welcome to the Satire Fire podcast, your number one source for news about the inevitable upcoming revolution. I am your host, Samuel.
And I'm Sydney.
And this week is part 2 of our current ongoing series about the book Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut. If you're new here and you weren't here last week, whenever we are covering a book, we break it into 3 parts. Part 1, which we did last week, is a plot summary of the book. So if you haven't read Player Piano, you want to get up to speed before we start talking this week, go back and listen to that, and it's as good as listening to the book, some people have said. Others have said that I'm full of shit for saying so, but I am still saying it. This week, part 2 is all about the context of the book, where we dive into the history of the author and the time period within which this book was written, so that we can, in part 3, analyze the book, interpret it, talk about what this book is saying. Is it saying it effectively? Is it a good book? Is it still relevant in modern times? Who's to say? I guess it's us. We're the ones that are to say, and you're the ones that are to listen. But before we get into this context that will hopefully make the intro make a little bit more sense to both you and Sydney, have you been reading, watching, listening, or doing anything lately that you want to talk about?
So for anyone out there who loves Noah Kahan, folky, kind of poppy, but not really. Like poppy, but not like it's hit mainstream, but it's like very folk inspired music. I'm like, you've heard of Noah Kahan songs. I don't know why I'm explaining it to you.
Yeah, you know about the Season of the Sticks.
You might not love Vermont, but you've heard of the Season of the Sticks. But any Noah Kahan fans out there, actually, fun fact, Samuel, for you.
Okay.
Back in like, I can't even remember what year, but let's say like 2018 or something.
Okay.
For anyone who listens to the podcast, you know that Samuel's music taste is like niche.
It's a really nice way of saying bullshit.
But you made me a playlist of songs that were just like songs Sydney hasn't heard before. And on that playlist was a Noah Kahan song from his Busy Head album, Young Blood, which is like, the point is that you introduced me to Noah Kahan before I even knew who Noah Kahan was. That's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like at that point I was maybe personally a little bit late to Noah Kahan, but I was pretty confident that I was going to have 100% batting average on songs that you had not heard.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, I think that like he started to gain like a following or a fan base with Busy Head, but he didn't blow up until Stick season. And so, yeah, I don't know. I realized that kind of not recently, but like a year and a half ago. But still, but I was like, what was the first Noah Kahan song I ever heard? I was trying to figure it out. And I couldn't remember if it was False Confidence or that. but it was that, and it was a playlist you made me. So anyways, that's crazy. But yeah, for any Noah Kahan fans out there, he just announced his next album called The Great Divide. He just released his new single, and I'm really excited. He's put out a lot of snippets and even played some of the songs in full live already. And every single song, like clip that he's put out, I've enjoyed so far, and I really like The Great Divide. So that's what I didn't really have a lot to say about it. I'm just really excited, and man he makes a good song, and it's so like I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. It's so refreshing to see. He's not old. He's like what, 28 or something.
That sounds right.
But he's not like conventionally cool or attractive. I'm not calling him like. I'm not making any
Noah
statement.
Kahan turned the podcast off 5 minutes ago.
I'm not making any statement about. I'm just saying like he's just kind of like a guy. Like he just looks like a guy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like it's just like.
Yeah.
He's just a guy from New England, and I didn't fully form this thought before I started to speak it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is something you should not do when you have a podcast. I just think it's like refreshing to see someone like him, who's just a guy,
Yeah.
get like
We love guys here.
such a like, oh my gosh. I don't know, large fan base. And I think that I think mainly what I'm talking about is he's like talking about mental health a lot. And I think that too, I think it's cool to hear like a guy talk about mental health and talk about mental health in like your mid to late 20s. And like, I don't know, he just seems like not the person that would usually be like getting the audience for that. And I don't really know what that means because I didn't fully form this thought, but I really like the guy. I mean, and I think like based on his lyrics, it seems like he's maybe like an alcoholic or has been in the past, and I hope he's doing okay. But like, I don't know. So
speaking of guys talking about mental health, that reminded me of an MMA fighter who, his name is Paddy Pimblett, and he recently, well, I don't know how recent it was, I just saw the video recently where he won a fight, and after the fight he was talking to the crowd and said that he had just found out that morning before the fight that his best friend had committed suicide. And he was giving a message of like, don't ever feel like you've got to be alone. Guys out there, you should feel comfortable to talk to people, and everyone out there, you should be willing to listen to guys when they come to you with these struggles. And it's like obviously a very important and very meaningful message. He has such a strong Scouse accent, and so it was this very serious message where I was listening to this guy on the stage be like, men out there, you wear so much on your shoulders, don't kill yourself.
Oh my gosh. That, you just made me think of the other thing I was going to say, and it's that, you can cut all this out because I'm making zero sense, but, and I'm like, who am I to speak on this? But also, I think what I meant with conventionally attractive is he's not like he's young, but he's not like 20-year-old pretty boy. Like he's just like, I mean, I think a lot of people would find him attractive. He's definitely a lot of people's type. I'm not like, but anyways, like the other thing though is that he is a straight man, I think. Presumably. He's never said otherwise, and he only sings about women, but also like, who knows? Who cares? But the point is that he like presents that way, has never said otherwise. And he's talking about like big feelings. And I'm like, I feel like the straight men need more men saying that so that they can stop being socialized into thinking that feelings, like responding to feelings in like inappropriate ways. It's bad. I don't know. I just feel like it's like cool that he's gotten so popular. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm sure that we'll cover a book at some point that lets us talk about it, but it is something that I'm really interested in and would like to do more of a deep dive on the like male loneliness epidemic. It's like a big thing that is in the news and stuff, and I think that a lot of that can be pointed towards men who feel the need to combat mental health issues without seeking help, because it's become so stigmatized in society for any man to not embrace individualism, like specifically rugged individualism. Like, if you can't be an island unto yourself, then can you really be a man, kind of stuff. And I want to be clear, I don't think that that very real problem serves as an excuse for men to act the way that they do sometimes. But I do think that it is a real problem, and it would be something interesting to talk more about maybe in the future if we have a book that covers loneliness.
Slapstick.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I just like rambled about Noah Kahan with no clear purpose. So what did you want to chat about?
I love bringing Satire Fire Firsts to the podcast.
Yeah.
And so I am this week bringing Satire Fire First game that I'm going to talk about.
Oh.
Because I think that it is relevant to the book and the context that we're about to get into. So, I just recently finished the video game Kentucky Route Zero, which is a game by Annapurna Games. They also put out Stray, which was that video game recently where you got to play as a cat. They also put out Outer Wilds and Donut County, where you played as a hole roaming around, I'm pretty sure was the point of that game. Anyways, very well-known game studio. This game started being released, I believe, in 2013, and is structured like a play, where it has 5 acts. And as time went on, they would release acts individually for the play until eventually in 2020 they released the final part and released the definitive edition of the game with all of the parts combined. And now, when I say that it's a video game, that's kind of... some people would disagree with me, because more than anything, it's leaning into a very narrative-driven, visual novel kind of an experience. The idea behind the game is there is someone who is trying to make a delivery to an address that doesn't exist in Kentucky. And in their quest to find this address, they end up finding their way onto Kentucky Route Zero, which is this underground road network river system that doesn't really exist. And you're kind of just following this person's journey and the journeys of the people that they join up with along the way as they're trying to make this delivery. But the reason why you play the game is because it's about the impacts of mining in Kentucky. It doesn't explicitly necessarily say that, but it has a lot of stuff to say about company towns and debt that the workers acquired and debt that would carry with you into the grave after you died from the company that you worked for. It talks a lot about ghost towns where the company built a town and then pulled all the resources out of it, and now the town is slowly dying because it doesn't have the resources it had before, and also the only jobs, even though they were shitty jobs, have left. It's talking about what it means to make art in these spaces and how you can go about making art. It has a lot to say about what family is and how family is developed, because you have characters who have lost kids and characters who lost their parents in mining accidents and stuff. And these people are becoming family units independently, like just This is the only way that we're going to be able to survive, and this makes sense. And so reconstructing a family unit from these different parts that you're picking up along the way. It deals a lot with addiction and the way that the struggles in these communities can drive people into these cycles of addiction. It has a lot to say about alcohol, but it also has a lot of subtones about Oxycontin and the way that the medical community really played a role in this area of the country having an opioid epidemic. All of that to say, I don't think this game is for everyone, because it's a lot of just reading and looking at beautiful visuals and experiencing the scenery and slowly making your way through a narrative experience, more so than like shooting guns or finding treasure or solving puzzles or anything like that. But it is the only video game that has ever made me cry, and it made me cry 2 different times. It at the end and then one time in the middle as well. I think it's so beautiful and well done. And if you are someone who maybe has never really tried video games that much, but you really enjoy narratives, I would recommend this, because it's not like any other video game. It's a lot more like an interactive graphic novel almost, or a movie with the subtitles turned on, than it is anything else. It is very, very different. And so if that's not what you're into, you're not going to like it. But if you think that that sounds like either an interesting enough prompt that you're willing to take a chance that you might not like the gameplay elements, I think that it's worth giving it a shot.
There's a game that's like that, and I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's very like you're kind of just ambiently interacting with a world as you progress through like a beautiful, artful story. And I can't remember what it's called. It's like not popular, but like popular in the like cozy gaming world.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sounds really like neat. What did you play it on? Like on a PC, or did you play it on a?
I don't know what all it is on. I played it using a Steam Deck. So like I played it on a computer, but it was a handheld computer. So that experience was really, really good for me. And so I know you can play it on a computer or a Steam Deck if you happen to have one, or a different kind of handheld computer. I don't know that it is on any consoles. It could be, because it worked with a controller, so maybe, but I haven't looked. But on the subject of labor and the way that it impacts our lives and bodies, let's spend a little bit of time talking about the context behind Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano. Now, I'm going to open with saying I'm not going to talk a tremendous amount about Kurt Vonnegut. In the same way, Sydney in the last series didn't talk a tremendous amount about George Orwell, because we already did a George Orwell context episode. We've already done a Kurt Vonnegut context episode. So if you want to hear more about Kurt Vonnegut and his personal life and the personal history that led him up to the point at which he was writing this book, that all was covered in our Slapstick Part 2 episode, which was episode 15 of the Satire Fire. So go back and give that a listen, and Sydney will talk you through the life and times of Kurt Vonnegut. The only really important part for this book to know is that this was his first full-length novel that he wrote, and he wrote it after quitting a job at General Electric. And this book is said to have been pretty heavily inspired by his experiences and his brother's experiences as they both worked at General Electric. But to start us off, just to put us in the right headspace of Vonnegut and his attitudes towards technology and progress and stuff like that, I have a quote from a 2004 lecture that he gave, and I'm going to have Sydney read this.
I tell you, I myself have had a terrible experience. There's no longer such a thing as a typewriter. No longer such. And that's as though they took away my violin, you know? And I had been a good violinist. But I think back in the old days when I had a choice between a typewriter or a computer, I have an Apple now, which I just use as a word processor. It tries to talk to me sometimes, and I just tell it to go engage in airborne intercourse with the hole on a rolling donut. You can take a... What does he say? You can take a...
Yeah, that was from Slapstick, where he's like, you can take a flying fuck at a rolling donut. You can take a flying fuck at the moon. So... Vonnegut does not love technology. I love him being like, it's like you took away my violin. And you know what? I was pretty good at violin.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't really want to talk too much about Vonnegut and his personal history. What I really want to be talking about this episode is the way in which labor has changed over time. And what changes had Vonnegut seen that led him to predict the future that happens in player piano. So, best place to start is the beginning. What did labor look like before the Industrial Revolution? At this time, essentially everything that was made by either individuals or small teams of craftspeople. Your job generally is going to consist of constructing entire manufactured goods where you have to hand make all of the individual components of whatever it is you're trying to build, fit them all together, adjust all of them individually, and then finally sell the product as a whole when it's completed. What finally changed this kind of system that had been built up over time was, in the late 1700s, the introduction of machines and assembly techniques. As soon as we were able to start using machines in place of humans using hand tools, that all of a sudden makes it significantly easier for you to mass produce goods. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I wanted to take a brief detour. In the year of 1785, this was the first time that there was reportedly a fully automatic flour mill. It was built by a guy named Oliver Evans, and it just used a bunch of machines to create flour and required no human input at all. So from 1785, we already had manufacturing facilities and techniques that were being run entirely devoid of human workers. Interestingly, he is also the guy who Oliver Evans invented both the first high-pressure steam engine, which led to steamboats existing, and also the world's first amphibious vehicle, which was called the Eructor Amphibolos. I'm going to send you a picture of this. I'm going to send you a picture of this son of a gun, and I want you to describe what you're looking at here.
Oh, okay. So there is a wagon. It's made of wood. Basically, it's shaped like a boat, but it has wagon wheels. In the back, it has kind of a propeller type thing, but it's not just yeah. There's a little robot guy. There's a guy, it's a little tin man in the back of the wooden boat. And then there's like a lever pulley system happening, like a something in the middle. And I think it's a steam.
Yeah.
I think there's a pipe for steam. Hope that made sense. Hope you're visualizing it.
Man, you could cruise so many bitches in this thing.
Well, I don't know where they're going to sit because this little Tin Man guy's taking the only seat. Is that really just like a... Is that actually a...
Yeah, that's it. So, one of the main impacts when it comes to labor that happened as a result of the introduction of machines is that people required way less technical skill in order to complete any given task. So think about the difference between needing to know by feel if fabric has been woven to the right tension versus just having to like use a machine that's going to do it the exact same way every single time. And maybe the end result isn't as high quality, but it's going to be consistent and you can make it really, really repetitively. This made a lot of people really redundant in the workforce, where it's craftspeople who could typically previously have charged a very high wage because they had a very specialized skill. They're now significantly less valuable because a factory owner could just make a lower quality but still functional version of their product with entirely untrained people. This leads us to the Luddites. Sydney, what do you know about the Luddites?
The name. Like, I've heard that. I don't remember anything about them if I've learned something about them in the past.
Okay. Well, this will be a brand new experience for you. I'm going to open up your eyes to the to the concept of the Luddites.
Were they... Wait, no, go ahead. Never...
No. Tell me about it.
Were they like a union? Or did I make that up?
I guess you could they were a collective. They weren't really a union.
Okay. That's my only guess.
So the modern interpretation of the idea of a Luddite is basically just somebody who is anti-technology and anti-progress. Where the term originally comes from is from the early 1800s in England. There was a group of skilled textile workers who were being threatened with the invention of new machines that were going to do their job for them. These people in particular were very highly skilled and highly specialized artisans. They had spent years, if not decades, perfecting their craft. And now, basically overnight, they were at risk of losing their job to these machines that were faster and could do stuff cheaper. In response, workers banded together under the image of this, like, folklore, mythic character of a guy called Ned Ludd. He is someone whose claim is that it was a guy who broke machines in order to save the working class, and that he lived in the Sherwood Forest, which is the same area that Robin Hood is claimed to have lived in. So almost certain. I don't think that there's evidence that he existed, but there's also, they can't prove that he didn't exist. So he's like a folklore kind of a guy. But his name basically became a moniker for everybody that was part of the movement, where whenever they were writing proclamations or letters that were being used as warnings for factory owners, they would sign it as Ned Ludd. Things started to get a little bit more escalated when the Luddites started breaking into factories and destroying the machines by hand in order to prevent them from being used to replace human labor. One of the methods that they would use was they had a sledgehammer that they had named Enoch. Enoch is a reference to the man Enoch Taylor, who was the inventor of the machines that they were breaking. And so when they would go into the factories, they would be shouting, Enoch made them and Enoch shall break them, and then proceed to tear them to pieces with a sledgehammer.
Okay, slay.
One specific group that stood to lose a lot were craftsmen called croppers, who were, again, a very specialized part of the specialized trade of making textiles. And the croppers were actually memorialized in a folk song that I'm going to send you the lyrics to, Sid.
Well, I don't know the melody.
Just read it like a poem.
Okay. I want everyone to get the authentic experience. All right. Come, cropper lads. Come, cropper lads of great renown, who love to drink good ale that's brown, and strike each haughty tyrant down with hatchet, pike, and gun. The cropper lads for me, and gallant lads they'll be, with lusty stroke the sheer frames broke, the cropper lads for me. What through the specials still advance, and soldiers nightly round us prance, the cropper lads still lead the dance with hatchet, pike, and gun. And night by night, when all is still, and the moon is hid behind the hill, we forward march to do our will with hatchet, pike, and gun. Great Enoch he shall lead the van, stop him who dares, stop him who can, press forward every gallant man with hatchet, pike, and gun.
So, as you might have been able to pick up in one of those lyrics, and soldiers nightly round us prance, obviously, this whole situation did not end well. Things came to a head when a mill owner named William Horsfall started talking a lot of shit about the Luddites. And he specifically was making a lot of claims about how there's going to be a revolution in the country, and how he looked forward to, quote, riding up to his saddle in Luddite blood. This statement irritated a lot of people, and it prompted 4 Luddites to ambush him, shoot him in the dick with a gun, and he then later died from that.
Oh.
So, now that things were starting to get violent, in response to this, instead of stepping in and doing anything to help protect workers from the threat of losing their jobs, the government made the destruction of factory machines a capital offense. If you got caught breaking a machine owned by a factory, you could be killed for it or sent to Australia, which was at that point still a penal colony. They ended up deploying 12,000 troops around the country in order to put an end to the revolution, and they ended up arresting most of the leaders within the movement. Some of them did get publicly executed, and then still more of them were sent to Australia to be in the penal colony.
Huh. Okay.
A crazy situation. Imagine if you were in your office and you accidentally broke the office printer and just gunshots rang out.
And you got sent to a penal colony.
Yeah. You accidentally break a pencil sharpener and they send your ass to Australia. There's another folk song that came out of all this that I'm going to have you read, Sydney. This one, actually, the most popular version of it was sung by Chumbawamba, a band known for the song Tub Thumpin'.
No more chant your old rhymes about old Robin Hood. His feats I do little admire. I'll sing the achievements of General Ludd, now the hero of Nottinghamshire. Those engines of mischief were sentenced to die by unanimous vote of the trade, and Ludd, who cannot a position defy, was the grand executioner made. Whether guarded by soldiers along the highway or closely secured in a room, He shivers them up by night and by day, and nothing can soften their doom. Shall the whole team of humble, I don't pronounce it that way. Shall the whole team of humble no longer oppressed, and shall Lud sheath his conquering sword, oh my gosh, be his grievance instantly met with redress, then peace shall be quickly restored. Let the wise and the great lend their aid and advice, never ere their assistance withdraw, till full-fashioned work at the old-fashioned price is established by custom and law.
Full-fashioned work at the old-fashioned price. Now, I think that this is probably something that I have in my notes later to make sure that I mention, but just in case, I want to talk about it now. Not all of the advances that I'm going to be talking about, not all the changes that happen to labor, are clear-cut, black and white, a good or a bad thing. Because while it is true that this type of machinery and stuff like that allowed for factory owners to pay people less and to diminish the amount of skill and craft that a community had within it, it's also true that it allowed people who could not have gotten a job before to get a job. And so there was a lot of people who previously were unable or incapable of taking up a trade or a craft or something along those lines. This allowed them to be able to at least get some money, and it did also make it to where the products being produced were cheaper. They were lower quality, but they were also cheaper, and so people could more readily afford them. Now, whether or not those things are, whether or not that particular juice is worth the squeeze, we'll maybe talk a little bit more about. But that is just kind of like a framing of it, of like, I don't want to just be saying, I don't want to provide the one narrative without suggesting that a counter narrative does also exist. And that would be part of the counter narrative that would exist. So, step 1, if you want to devalue labor, is introduce machines. Step 2 is the invention of interchangeable parts. What do you know about interchangeable parts, Sid?
Of what?
Everything. This is a brand new concept at the time.
Interchangeable parts.
Yes. What does the name suggest to you, I guess?
Things that can be interchanged.
You know what?
They do the same job, but they're different things.
A rose by any other name, you know? Basically, what I was saying before is that in the process of manufacturing goods, typically the bulk of the process was one person assembling things, making each component individually, and then having to individually modify every component in order to make everything fit together. So, if one person made 2 guns was like a big part of this. If one person made 2 guns, you could not necessarily take a part from one gun and use it to fix the other gun that just broke apart, because they were made by hand. There were slightly different stocks or slightly different hammers or like whatever it is. You couldn't just take them apart, put them together, and swap parts around. Interchangeable parts fixed that, because now that we're using machines and you can be a lot more precise and repetitive in the types of processes that you're doing, you can now make the exact same part multiple times and not have to worry about any of them being different. One of the like testing things that they did for this, or like demonstrations, was a guy who was using interchangeable parts in rifles, took 5 rifles to the floor of Congress, disassembled all of them, and then scrambled the parts together, and then had a couple of people help him build 5 brand new rifles out of all the parts, just to show of like, hey, they're all literally the exact same. there's no way you can mess this up. It's going to save us so much money. That's what you kind of need to know. But again, what this is kind of serving to do is decrease the amount of craft that a worker needs to have in order to perform a job. Because before, you had to know how the thing that you were making worked. Because if it doesn't work, you then have to modify it in order to make it work. Like if the gun's not firing, you have to be able to look at it and say, oh, it's because this part is catching, and then make that part smaller so that it doesn't catch anymore. Now, not only are you losing the physical craft of physically manufacturing stuff by hand because machines are doing it, you're also losing some of the intellectual craft of being able to say, oh, I know in and out exactly how this process is done because I have to in order to make sure that every single component is made correctly.
Because the components are now interchangeable, so it's
Exactly.
not really... Yeah, okay.
And so this is also leading us into more of a division of labor that is being created, where people don't have to be interested in the job in order to do it, and the jobs that you're doing are becoming significantly smaller in scope. Previously, if you were going to dedicate 10 years of your life to learn how to weave textiles, you probably liked weaving textiles. Now, if your job is just running a machine that makes a specific metal component, you don't feel the connection anymore, and you don't necessarily have to like running the machine. You just have to be able to run a machine in order to get into the field, because the barrier of entry is so much lower. So I have a quote from Adam Smith about this that I'm going to have you read. I'll give you the warning. It's a bit of a brick, but I think it's good. And also it is written by Adam Smith, and so he loves commas.
Okay, Jane Austen. In the progress of the division of labor, the employment of the far greater part of those who live by labor, that is, of the great body of people, comes to be confined to a few very simple operations, frequently one or two. But the understandings of the greater part of men are necessarily formed by their ordinary employments. The man whose life is spent in performing a few simple operations, of which the effects too are perhaps always the same or very nearly the same, has no occasion to exert his understanding or to exercise his invention in finding out expedients for removing difficulties which never occur. He naturally loses, therefore, the habit of such exertion, and generally becomes as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for a human creature to become. The torpor of his mind renders him not only incapable of relishing or bearing a part in any rational conversation, but of conceiving any generous, noble, or tender sentiment, and consequently of forming any just judgment concerning many even of the ordinary duties of private life. It corrupts even the activity of his body, and renders him incapable of exerting his strength with vigor and perseverance in any other employment than that to which he has been bred. His dexterity at his own particular trade seems, in this manner, to be acquired at the expense of his intellectual, social, and martial virtues. Wow, that was a big statement there at the end.
Yeah, so basically, you now not only have no requirement to have a physical craft, you also don't have to problem solve anymore. And that has a big impact on the way that you go about your life. If you're not being physically or intellectually stimulated for 8 to 10 to 12 hours of your day, what kind of an impact is that going to have on you? Now, I think Adam Smith comes down a little bit hard on the side of every single worker is going to become as stupid and ignorant as is possible. But I think that there is something in that. Another quote that I saw about this was from Karl Marx. This was something that he described as the theory of alienation, in which he said, "Let us suppose that we had carried out production as human beings. In my production, I would have objectified my individuality, its specific character, and therefore not only an individual manifestation of my life during the activity, but also, when looking at the object, I would have the individual pleasure of knowing my personality to be objective, visible to the senses, and hence a power beyond all doubt. Our products would be so many mirrors in which we saw reflected our essential nature." So this is going back into the like identity aspect of like, if you were a cobbler and you saw somebody walking around in shoes that you made, you'd be like, I made those. That's a thing that I made. And that makes you feel proud to be able to point to something that's in the real world and be able to say, I did that. That exists in the world because of me. Or barrels or fabric or like whatever it is, it gives you this sense of connection to the people in the world around you. Whereas if the part that you play is reduced to the point that you are just putting a couple of bolts into a piece of machinery and then it's going somewhere else to get more bolts put into it, you don't have that ownership of like, I made that. Because you didn't make it, you just kind of helped it get made. Which leads us to a discussion about the assembly line. So, Sydney, this is one that's got like some cult understanding around it and some old wives' tales. Were you told anything in school about where the assembly line came from? Like who invented the assembly line?
I'm trying to figure out like the last time that I was studying like the Industrial Revolution
Yeah.
in school. I don't know if this was from school, but isn't it from like Ford Motor Company? Is that
Okay. So that is the common misconception. And I'm glad that you also, because that's what I learned growing up, was that Henry Ford invented the assembly line. That's not really true. One, there's some historical examples of people doing processes that could be classified as an assembly line before Henry Ford existed and like Ford as a motor company existed. And also, even within the company of Ford, Ford was given the idea by an employee who had been to a slaughterhouse. And he made note of how efficient it was. He actually referred to it as a de-assembly line and talked about how, wait a second, what if we did something similar where we take our product and we move it to employees instead of having our employees move to the product? I do want to make note, put a pin in it, of the irony of the assembly line coming from a slaughterhouse is not lost on me. It's a very Animal Farm.
This gets a check for the irony. Satire Fire bookmark.
So, I kind of touched on it there, but what is an assembly line? How's it different from the past? Basically, the change is that instead of either workers completing a lot of jobs independently, or workers having to move from station to station with their tools in order to make things be built over time, you just have workers remain as stationary as possible and have all of the products that you're making be moved in front of them using machines so that they can do a small amount of work while standing in their station, and the product never stops moving. It just keeps on moving past. It means no one worker not only needs to have an understanding of the entire process of making a product, like you don't have to know how a car is made to be part of the process of making a car. You also now don't even get to see the entire process. You only get to see the part of the process that happens in the 6 foot in front of you, or whatever it is that you've been allotted as far as space goes. You only need to learn and repeat a single physical motion or two physical motions over and over ad infinitum. So I have a quote about this process for you to read, Sid.
What was worked out at Ford was the practice of moving the work from one worker to another until it became a complete unit, then arranging the flow of these units at the right time and at the right place to a moving final assembly line from which came a finished product. Regardless of earlier uses of some of these principles, the direct line of succession of mass production and its intensification. Is that a real word? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a word from Wicked. Anyway, sorry. And its intensification into automation stems directly from what we worked out at Ford Motor Company between 1908 and 1913. Henry Ford is generally regarded as the father of mass production. He was not. He was the sponsor of it.
So, because of the changes that Ford made in the adoption of this assembly line process, by the time it was fully implemented, Ford was making a new car every 3 minutes. And they were actually moving so fast that the bottleneck in production was how long it took for the paint to dry. And that's why, for a long time, up until 1926, every Model T was painted with a lacquer called Japan Black, because it was the only paint that could dry fast enough. Everything else, if they used it, by the time that the car was coming out of the factory, it still had wet paint. So that's why every single Model T was black. It was the only thing that could keep up with the speed of production that they were going through. Now, Ford famously was one of the factory workers who went out of his way to let the benefits of the efficiency in his factories improve the lives of his workers, where he increased their pay in proportion with their increased efficiency. However, you do not have to hand it to Henry Ford. It said that the working conditions in the factories were so bad that if they wanted to increase their staffing by 100 people, they needed to hire 900 people because so many of them were going to quit due to the conditions. Additionally, he refused to hire Jewish people to work for him, and he actually wrote a book called The International Jew that was so anti-Semitic and impactful that he got cited by Hitler as being a personal hero. I've got a quote for you to read from an article by Reuven Spolter.
In 1938, as the Nazis were preparing to unleash their armies on Europe, which ultimately killed tens of millions of souls, the Nazi regime awarded Henry Ford with the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor it could bestow upon a non-German. Testifying at the Nuremberg trials after World War II, convicted Hitler youth leader Baldur von... this guy... who, in his role as military governor of Vienna, deported 65,000 Jews to camps in Poland, stated, "The decisive anti-Semitic book I was reading..." That's an insane way to start a sentence. "The decisive anti-Semitic book I was reading and the book that influenced my comrades was the book by Henry Ford, The International Jew. I read it and became anti-Semitic." The book made a great influence on myself and my friends because we saw in Henry Ford the representative of success and also the representation of a progressive social policy. So many words in that sentence confused me. And what are you saying, my guy? Not my guy. This guy.
Explicitly not claiming this guy. Somebody come get your man. It's so wild to me that you can write a book so anti-Semitic that just reading it turns you into an anti-Semite. Like, bro, I don't think that's what happened. I think you were already an anti-Semite.
It made me anti-Semitic.
Yo, dude, me and all my friends have been reading this book, and you will not believe what happens. You read it, and then it makes you say the N slur.
And it was like... the decisive anti-Semitic book I was reading. Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going around in the genre. This is the only one you need, though.
and this guy's on trial and he's saying
Yeah.
this stuff. He's like, you know what?
I considered just finding a bunch to prove that, to make this point, I considered just finding a bunch of quotes where Ford was being either racist or anti-Semitic, and then having you read those so we could clip them out of context, but I thought that this would serve the point just as well. So this kind of leads us into the state of work when Vonnegut wrote Player Piano. Most people have had their agency in the workplace taken away from them. Work has stopped being an expression of who you are as a person and has become something that you just have to do in order to survive. And the benefits of those changes were mainly being felt at the top of society. Some people had increases in their quality of life. The vast majority of working class people saw diminishing of their quality of life. Well, the people who owned the factories were able to get significantly richer as a result of this. So next week, I want to talk about the analysis of the book as well as the ways that labor has changed in recent years that I think Vonnegut would have also likely pointed to as like an example of the themes in Player Piano. But what I want to leave us with for this one as a lighter, uplifting note is from a 2005 interview with Vonnegut that was done. The interview was conducted by David Brancaccio of PBS, who was asking him about a specific scene in his latest memoir, A Man Without a Country. It's worth noting that the chapter in which this scene takes place was called I Have Been Called a Luddite. So, Sydney, I'm going to send you this interchange, and then do you want to be the interviewer, David Brancaccio, or Kurt Vonnegut?
You can be Kurt since you're leading this charge.
Okay.
And David says, scene. There's a little sweet moment, I've got to say, in a very intense book, your latest, in which you're heading out the door and your wife says, "What are you doing?" I think you say, I'm going to buy an envelope.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Oh, she says, well, you're not a poor man, you know? Why don't you go online and buy 100 envelopes and put them in the closet? And so I pretend not to hear her. And go out to get an envelope because I'm going to have a hell of a good time in the process of buying one envelope. I meet a lot of people. I see a lot of great-looking babes. And a fire engine goes by, and I give them a thumbs up. And ask a woman what kind of dog that is. And I don't know. And of course, the computers will do us out of that. And what the computer people don't realize, or they don't care, is we're dancing animals. You know, we love to move around. And we're not supposed to dance at all anymore.
We're not supposed to dance at all anymore.
So that's going to do it for us for this week. I hope that y'all enjoyed learning some of the context of labor history and the ways in which it kind of relates to Player Piano, and maybe you're already able to see some of those connections as to what it is that Vonnegut is rallying against and what side of this debate he's trying to come out on top of. But all of that kind of analysis is something that you can look forward to hearing next week when we put a bow on this series by combining all the elements that we've talked about so far. But for this week, I want to thank you so much for listening and giving us some time out of your week. Please be sure to rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening. Tell a friend about the show and how much you enjoy it. And our intro and outro are remixes of the song 48 by Cullah. And Sydney, if people want to get in touch with us or hear more about what we are potentially getting up to, where are some places that they can find us?
We are on Instagram at the Satire Fire Pod. That's POD. And then on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube at the Satire Fire. Like, comment, DM us, subscribe, follow, whatever, share with your friends, anything. We appreciate it.
Yeah, if you happen to be a cropper who was put out of work by the machines, I want to talk to you. I want to hear what that experience was like for you. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I still want to hear from you. Yeah, we're always glad to get your comments. But that's going to do it for us for this week. Thanks for listening to the Satire Fire, and don't forget to thank your local librarian. I am Samuel.
I'm Sydney.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
I just about come to the end of the road. Here, I've just about lost patience with you people. You get your ass out to the mountains or someplace, or hide in there and watch that damn tube. But if not, fuck it. I'm done. In fact, my sermon